Hello guys and gals, welcome back to another episode of Haunted Gaming. This time we return to the land of gaming creepypastas and read a recommended creepypasta called Akarui, Mirai. During RPG Maker VX, mysterious circumstances leads the creator of a file to find his game already finished, even though it was only partially done beforehand, so as any good RPG creator would do. He beta tests it to see how well the game works. However, he soon finds a location that wasn't there before, and the story of a little girl named Akarui Mirai. The RPG Maker VX is a pretty expensive download, yet still there is so much variety that you can create almost any RPG you so desire. There once was a boy named Alex who had spent about 2 hours every day for about 2 weeks developing his RPG. It was a fairly large one as well, as he had planned it to be filled with a several-act story, as well as side quests and other bonus material. This RPG also featured 10 storyline bosses that were named and based on Alex and his friends, just a little something to get his friends more involved and having a good time with it. One day, however, he loaded up the map to continue in its creation only to find it completely done. Everything that he wanted to be put into a map was already placed: monsters, locations, bosses, side quests, everything, you name it. Confused and a tad curious, he decided to beta test this game and see how it worked. Putting on his headphones, he hit the play button. To his surprise, it worked flawlessly. Everything moved, functioned, and acted exactly how he imagined it would. Even the bosses who mimicked his friends acted very much like his friends. This, however, confused and began to disturb him a bit. He hadn't started putting in dialogue for the game. He and his friends were going to work together to come up with their own dialogue, yet here he was playing this finished product with all the people who were supposed to be his friends acting exactly how they did and even looking like they did. Something that got his attention, though, was the fact that they continuously mentioned a person named Mirai. They kept saying how they were sorry for what happened, or that they wouldn't play after they had been defeated. Who was Mirai? He didn't know, but he assumed it would be explained as he played the game. For some odd reason, guilt began to build up inside him, but he wasn't quite sure why. As he kept playing, he found he found one thing out of place. It was a town that he had never planned to have. A town that went by the same name as a town he and his friends had lived in. He started to get a little suspicious, and he explored the area. Despite the maker's limitation due to it being very fantasy-based, the towns did look very similar to his hometown. This was namely in a way that the homes were in the areas of the town where homes were in his hometown in real life, and stores were in the town where stores were arranged in his hometown. So basically the placement of the buildings matched the placement of, the locations in real life. So he looked around the town, talking to the carefree and unsanity denizens of the town itself. He didn't find anything terribly unusual, save on character, who mentioned a boy named Raymond. Raymond was a friend of Alex's, who was going to be the second-to-last boss in the main storyline. Apparently, though, Raymond had gone insane after something happened with a girl named Mirai. That line sparked recognition within Alex. Raymond had also been a crazy kid, who many would probably have considered insane. They were indeed going to incorporate that into the game itself, but they didn't plan for any major explanation. Yet now it had something to do with this Mirai character, who is now revealed to be a girl, and had something happened to her. Guilt once again filled his stomach for an unknown reason, and again he couldn't figure out why. Still, he pressed on, exploring this town, eventually coming to what looked like a cemetery, the only part of this town that wasn't similar to Alex's own. In the cemetery was a crypt, one that was open. He entered this crypt and noticed that it was a lot larger than inside than it was on the outside. Simply, he did shrug it off. It was a custom-made RPG and anything could really happen, after all. As he continued down a long hallway, he swore that he saw the sprite of a little girl with black hair, red eyes, and a sort of dark scarred face briefly appear up ahead, but it was gone so fast the only reason he noticed it was due to an afterimage. Curious though, he continued on only to suddenly be stopped for no reason. That was then this text showed up and read these words: "Why couldn't you play with me?" This disturbed him a bit, yet he continued walking. The character stopped again and another line of text had come up: "Why didn't you save me?" Alex swallowed, yet he continued walking again. The character stopped, then another line: "The burning. I can't breathe." Slowly, sweat began to run down his face, yet he somehow had the nerve to keep walking. One last time, the character stopped, and one last line had come up: "Why did you leave me to die, Alex?" The instant that line came up, a pained scream of a girl rang through his headphones. Startled and scared out of his wits, he instantly threw them off his ears. The scream stopped, and he looked back on the screen. It was black. Slowly, however, it had faded back. He was now outside the crypt. His heart was pounding. He decided to go around town and ask people about the girl Mirai, assuming the text had changed. Surprisingly, though, it did. The people, one by one, explained the story of Mirai. Apparently Mirai was a friendly young girl who had hung out with Alex's character and the characters of his friends many years ago, before they had become part of the organization the game's plot was based around. One day, though, Alex and his friends had refused to play with her. It has something to do with her breaking a promise and getting them all in trouble. Saddened, especially after apologizing, she ran back inside her home. A few seconds later, a scream was heard and the entire village rushed to see what it was. Apparently, in her upset state, Mirai had tripped and had fallen face first into a lit fireplace. The village medic checked her. He had quickly gasped and ran out the door, but not before ordering them to wait until his return. After he left, they assumed her dead, and not wanting to wait until the corpse started smelling, Alex and his friends offered to bury her within the old crypt, wishing to bury her peacefully to cleanse their guilt. Her parents had agreed, and they placed her in a stone casket inside the crypt. The medic soon returned with a healer and asked where Mirai's body was. They had told her that they didn't wish for the body to start smelling, so they buried her in the crypt. Horrified, the medic and healer quickly rushed into the crypt. The others followed, wondering what was going on. They opened the casket only to find the decayed body of Mirai. Only it was not in the position Alex's character and his friends left her in. The position looked like she was struggling to lift the lid, like she was trying to get out. A terrible sense of horror drifted over them as the realization sunk in. Alex, reading the story, felt a terrible wave of horror and guilt fill him. But why guilt? It was only his character who did this, right? Trying to get the horrifying story out of his mind, he quickly continued the game. His friends were still muttering their apologies to Mirai and their actions upon the defeat. Every time he read their lines, he felt more and more guilt for his character's story. Finally, he made it to the final boss, himself. However, something was different throughout this fight. Every time he took down a quarter of his character's health, a text box would appear saying, "Don't hide from the truth." After Alex had defeated his character, the in-game Alex started his dying speech. "Don't hide from the truth, the guilt. You just don't want to remember, do you? Stop hiding. Face reality. Repent. Repent." Suddenly, the game faded to black and the start screen came up again with the new game and load option dimmed, meaning they couldn't be used. Alex replayed the final speech over and over again in his mind. Why did he feel so much guilt for the actions of his in-game character? Why did the name Mirai suddenly start sounding familiar? Yes, the more thought Alex had put into it, the more that name sounded familiar. Alex decided to do some research, if only to stifle his curiosity. He found an old news report talking about a girl named Akarui Mirai, a Japanese girl who immigrated from Japan to the United States, and who had died after suffering severe burns after falling into a fireplace. He quickly read the story. To his stunned horror, it sounded exactly like the same one in the game. Apparently, she had tripped while in an upset state after her friends insulted her, due to getting them in trouble. Slowly, memories started coming back to him. Memories of someone who had struggled for so long to forget. Memories of a girl named Akarui Mirai. Repent. Repent. These words kept echoing in his mind, so the next day he asked his parents if they could take him to the cemetery. Confused, though, they asked why, to which he replied, "I want to see Mirai." Their eyes widened in recognition and nodded seriously and sadly. After getting in formal dress and heading to the cemetery, he walked up, alone, to a single gravestone. Akarui Mirai, January 1st, 1995 to April 4, 2004. Loving daughter and friend. We shall miss you greatly. A cold sense of dread filled him. He fell to his knees as he began to sob. Finally, after a few minutes, he spoke. "I'm so sorry, Mirai. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for what I said. Please, if you can hear me, forgive the sorry excuse of a friend." He then thought back to the game and how the Mirai game had been found in the casket. His eyes widened in horrible realization. No. Oh, dear God, we buried you. We buried you alive. Oh, God, Mirai. Sweet Jesus, Mirai. Alex bent his head down in shame and horror. The pain was ever growing, never ceasing. "Mirai, if you can hear me, please never allow me to forget again." Slowly, Alex got up and bid us farewell, but in turning around he saw a young girl standing in front of him, with black hair, red eyes, and a burnt and scarred face. Exactly like that girl in the crypt in game. Well, what do I think about this creepypasta? It's alright. It's okay. Now, first off, what I like is that it feels different compared to other gaming creepypastas. And what I mean by that is that it doesn't revolve around a certain nostalgic game, or haunted game, or, you know, a hacked game from Bootman Bill or something, you know, like the early game or whatever. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it is the first RPG Maker creepypasta we have done. It focuses on a deceased girl named Akarui Mirai, and I did some research myself, and fortunately I could not find anything about this dead girl called Akarui Mirai, and hopefully that news does not exist. So, you know, it's about Akarui Mirai and her venturing into this game in development. And it's not the first time we've seen a dead individual make an appearance in a creepypasta in such a manner, but it's interesting to see that it is a repressed memory for the player themselves, as each and every time the player delves into this name, it becomes more and more familiar as time goes on. Now, the creepypasta builds up somewhat when the player exploring the town and whatnot, you know, seeing these buildings change, or, you know, this game make up the building representing, you know, things in real life, players and, you know, the people in the game, the NPCs resembling actual people. That's the build-up it goes to, but that's where I begin not to like this creepypasta, especially the ending, which I'll get to later. Now, the concept is somewhat unique, but the execution is a tad off. It's no shitpasta, mind you. There are far more awful ones I could dig up here. But what I think this creepypasta should have done, in my opinion, is to build up a little more efficiently, or a lot efficiently, by making it so that the story of Akarui Mirai stretch across his game development, make it so that every day, you know, those 2 hours that this game is being worked on, more and more weird phenomena occur, like some cryptic or, you know, subtle map changes, hidden messages embedded in the coding, or commented into the coding, or somewhere, you know, maybe even change NPC dialogue to, flesh out the story of Akarui Mirai, you know, weird assets appearing in the game, you know, something where even the player could wonder if it's real, and also playing on that, you know, entire aspect of the repressed memory, so that, you know, it could slowly be uncovered as the player is coding the game, because subconsciously the player could, I don't know, when they're bored or something, type stuff like this in and forget it later on. Maybe it could unravel in that manner. That would have been a really cool twist. Now, the ending was nice. It was nice, and we were at Mirai's grave, and the dialogue was okay, and, you know, the player was sorry, and it definitely proved that I can't voice act emotionally at midnight when I'm recording voiceovers. But it was okay. It was okay. All the way to the end, though, when Mirai was out of the grave, it seemed. I mean, really. That's like Zelda 2 The Lost Levels, Tails Doll, or Sonic.exe shit right there. That really killed the ending. I think if you took that last little bit out and left it, you know, left it on that last bit of dialogue, it would have ended a shit ton better. Just a somber ending. But no, we need zombies coming out of graves, you know, taking this motherfucker out. Yep, that's the ending. Oh yeah. Mirai's got her vengeance. At least his creepypasta's title's pretty ironic, though. Akarui Mirai apparently means bright future in Japanese, but that's really all I have to say, though. It's an okay creepypasta, and for what it is, it's okay. It could be a whole lot better, though. What would you rate this creepypasta, and what would you change to make it better? This has been another episode of Haunted Gaming, and if you like what you saw, then like, comment, and subscribe. This is me, Mudahar, and I am out.